Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Parker Pod. Today's guest is very into the personal development and the personal training space. He's also a real estate agent. He's the author of the book Turn Down the Noise. He also is the former host of the Versatile Success podcast. He is a motivational speaker. He is also open for Billy Allsbrooks. He was one of my main mentors when I came down to Tampa and I started personal training. He is a dear friend of mine. He's a successful, highly motivated entrepreneur, and I'm very glad to have him on the podcast today. His name is Justin Rambo. Rambo, how you doing today, man?
Hey, Joe, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. It's been a while since I've been on a podcast, but I'm super excited for it.
Awesome, man. So let's just start from the beginning, right? Like, what first got you into personal training, fitness, personal development? Was there something that just sparked for you, or was it kind of a build up over time?
It kind of was a build up over time and sort of found me. So I grew up playing sports. So I was a big football player. I ran track, and then I went to school for kinesiology. So all that wrapped up together, people would always ask me for tips in terms of their own fitness and how to stay in shape and all that jazz. And they would ask me to help them out in terms of working out. So I eventually got into personal training after I graduated, or a little bit before I graduated, with my bachelor's degree. And then from there, I opened up my own personal training studio back in Rochester, New York. This is 2013. I had that brick and mortar studio for 4.5 years. Started with a studio that was about, I think, 1,700 square feet, and then moved to one that was a little bit larger, 2,400 square feet. But it was just really time consuming, one-on-one training. And by the end of it, the last year, I had 4 trainers working under me. I had contracts with local high schools, contracts with rec centers, contracts with a local bank to run their employee wellness initiative. So it was a lot. There's a lot going on, but for me, I knew that wasn't scalable. So as the podcast goes on, you'll notice that I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a big picture thinker. I want things to scale. So just doing the one-on-one for me wasn't as scalable, and it was a lot more time consuming. So then I took some time away from fitness in terms of that space, and then the rest is history, as they say. There's a lot more that comes after that in terms of like the book, personal development, things that we'll get into later.
Yeah. So, like, looking back on that, like, what kind of mindset did you have then that made you want to pursue, like, just the entrepreneurship aspect of it? Like, what was a shift from personal training, helping people out, getting those contracts? And then was there another moment where you realized, like, hey, like, this isn't for me? And when did that realization come to you?
Yeah, so it's like twofold. I've always been an entrepreneur at heart since I was a kid. In fact, I remember in fourth grade, I would take, kids would break their pencils and throw them away. Well, instead of throwing them away, they would give it to me, like little chopped up pencils or whatever they had. And I would sharpen them, and I would resell those pencils to classmates for like, 5 cents or something crazy, 10 cents. And I would put it in a little Tic Tac jar. And so then I recruited some other classmates to help me do it. And then for some reason, one of the classmates asked the teacher if she wanted to buy a broken pencil, and she didn't like it, so she shut that air quote business down. But I would always shovel driveways, in the winter, so that way I can make some extra money, cut grass. So I've always had the entrepreneurial drive, entrepreneurial spirit, but I also look at life a little differently than most people. I know it's not, you're not going to be here forever. I want to make the most impact and do things how I want to do them in the right way. And so I guess that was my introduction to like wanting to do something for myself. And so when I opened the personal training studio, that was the introduction that now, okay, I'm an entrepreneur. I had the LLC, and from the inception, this is another crazy story. So I opened the business in 2013, but the idea came to me in 2009. So that was the introduction to business. But then you get to different levels and you realize I can't scale the one-on-one part of it. And for me, that was eye opening, but I also learned a lot along the way that then leads me to a lot of things I'm doing now. And so it's for me, you just go and do things. You reach a certain level, you realize certain things, and then you have to like regroup. And then also, it's really important to like have people that have done it, because in my space, when I did it, I didn't have someone to turn to that opened a fitness studio that can tell me what to do, what not to do, and I'm a little bit hard headed, so I probably would have found out on my own anyway, of, what not to do the hard way. But for me, it's just, there's different levels to it. But I would say to anyone, if there's something you want to do, just go out and do it. We live in a day and age where there's technology at our disposal. We have, all the information we need to have. We live in a day and time where things that maybe our grandparents wanted to do or our parents wanted to do, that they couldn't do because they don't have the resources we have. So why not go forth and try to produce and do things how you want to live out your own dreams based on the times we have? And I'm a big history buff too, so we'll talk about that, but how that plays into the psyche of me going after certain things.
Okay. Yeah. Do you think that there's, because like from the outside looking in, right? Like there's definitely entrepreneurship on multiple levels, but two specific levels, right? Like when you're making your own business in the personal training space, it's kind of like go, go, go. How many clients can I get? How can I impact those clients? How can I help those clients? And then from a business owning perspective, like your employees and the people that you have under you are kind of like your clients. So, what was the main determining factor or distinction, I guess is a better word for it, between being your own individual entrepreneur in the personal training space and then running a business?
So this is something I learned the hard way. Having systems, right? So having a system in place. So if you're an entrepreneur and you have a service-based business like personal training and you're used to doing things your way, you can use that with any business that's service-based or just any business in general. But if you have the foresight to know that you want to have employees one day, set up systems first, because what happens is, and this is what I found out the hard way, is I ran things how I would run it. I trained how I would train. And so once I started getting new trainers in, a lot of them were completely new. They're green to the industry. So they would look to me for guidance, whereas I didn't feel like I had the time to like really teach someone new. And also I didn't have a system set up to where they can just fall into. It was just, okay, here's this client, train them. And so I would say the big distinction is having a system. Now, if you don't have a system, you just at that point created a job for yourself. If you have a system, then you created a business that can sort of run by itself. So that's one of the hard lessons I had to learn is systems will get you to where you need to go. And that's also embedded in history. So anyone that's done something great, you can take the Henry Fords, you can take the Madam C.J. Walker, you can take and pretty much anybody. Rockefeller, they didn't just start it on their own; but they also had systems, right? So I would say figure out what system works, but a system that's scalable and something that you can teach, which is the main thing, something that you can teach.
Okay. Yeah. Actually, when we had talked about this a little bit and I'd gone over some notes, when you wrote history, I thought you wanted to talk about your own history. So what are, besides what you had just mentioned, what are some other connections to how you plan on running your business in the future that you're incorporating when it comes to things that you've learned throughout history?
Yeah, so so I draw. Some people listen to music and they get a lot of energy and they get really hyped up and they get really excited while the music is playing.
Yeah.
For me, I can watch a documentary of something that someone that has done something or overcome something, even people that we don't really hear of the day-to-day individuals, someone who created cinnamon rolls and they have a bunch of mall kiosk franchises or famous Amos cookies. Like those small stories, those are the things that sort of propel me and give me that same energy to then go forward because with history has clues. Success leaves clues. And so why not learn from, like I said earlier, you might want a mentor. Well, if you don't have a mentor, use history as your mentor. You can look at the totality of their life, what they've done, what works and what doesn't work, but you can do it with multiple people. So then you can start to stack, okay, what typically doesn't work and what typically does work. And then you can filter in how you operate and then move forward. So history for me is a big player in terms of the entrepreneurial drive, but it's not just business history, right? So it's just human history because then you understand human psychology and how people think and how people operate. And so that helps me go forward. It helps me understand certain things and it helps me keep the drive alive and not settle no matter what happens.
Yeah, and like when I look at history also shows there's a lot of different things that have happened to various different people, and you can't all your excuses get thrown out the window, right? Like people say, "Oh, well, all of these people are very successful in life because they've had all these things given to them." But if you take like Milton Hershey, for example, right? Like he started out by just selling caramels for a penny. And he would go to the lady who owned the bakery or owned the candy shop. And he would say, "Hey, if you give me 20 caramels, I'll bring you back 10 cents at the end of the day." And he would do that. He would sell all 20 caramels. He would take 10, he would give her 10. And it became this like he wasn't worth a ton of money. He just started very small. So if someone goes, "Well, I can't do this because I'm not given this or I'm not given that," it's like you can start. You have to start though, right? Like you have to start with what you have and what you're able to do and bring something to the market with a skill or a passion or something very unique that people are going to appreciate. So what about your training style do you feel like is very unique or marketable to potential clients?
I would say it has actually not too much to do with training, like the physical aspect. It's just more so you have to be able to relate to people, you have to be personable, and you have to I have some, I'm charismatic, so that helps out a lot. But since and we're gonna revert back to history a lot, since I love history so much, I understand people. So if I'm talking to person A, I realize this is a certain personality I'm talking to. So this is how they respond to what I am talking about, or this is how they like for me to address them. This is how they like for my energy to go. And so it's the personality and the relationship with the person that then allows them to start trusting you as the trainer. And then they start to understand the physicality of the training and what I'm trying to do. And so I would say for me, what sets me apart is just personality and understanding people. But I would say honestly, is I'm going to correlate a lot of different things together. So just stick with me. But the fact that I do a lot of research and watch documentaries and watch, listen to history things. It's because I'm very inquisitive. So when I'm talking to a client, I'm very inquisitive. I ask a lot of questions and they can really tell I'm tuned into them, which then builds that know, like, and trust factor.
Yeah. Absolutely, because you can know. I mean, we've witnessed it. There have been trainers that we know that. I mean, for me personally, I'm going to speak on myself. They know a lot more about the body than I do, especially being a business major and coming into that field. They knew a lot of the way that the body functions more than I did, but they couldn't communicate or build that relationship the way that you need to in order to have someone trust you. And I think a lot of people kind of, I don't know, think because they know that that is all that the client needs. But unless you're able to relay that information to people, it's very hard for them to be able to trust you because you can know every muscle and every bone in the body. But if the person doesn't know what you're actually asking them to do and you can't communicate that properly, it's going to be very, very hard for them to trust you and trust themselves and their ability to be able to get the work done.
Yeah. And honestly, they might not care either.
Yeah.
I've had, I've overheard conversations of a trainer trying to explain something to a client, and what they're explaining is valid, but it's the way they're explaining it, where is you or I can come in and say the same thing in a different language, not literally a different language, but you know what I mean, and put it in our own little way, and the client gets it. So a lot of times when trainers, I call them like the scientific or technical trainers, when they speak the anatomical terms or anatomical language to clients that have never heard that language, it goes over the head. But when you make it relatable to the person and their body and how it should move and why it should move a certain way, they then get it and they start to really understand it. So it's really a lot of times we learn things in school or we learn things during the course of getting our certification that we then don't speak to the client in that way, but we still apply those principles.
Yeah, like if you're trying to like discuss core strength to them and you go like how it affects the, your arms and your shoulders and your legs, and you kind of use all those scientific terms. If you go, hey, if we don't work on your core, you're not going to be able to pick up your grandkids anymore. Like your back's going to give out when you go to pick them up. Like that's something that they can understand. That's something relatable when you pull from their life experiences and their ability to actually do things and actually live a good life. That's when they become invested because they can see it from their perspective.
Yep, definitely, 100%. Yeah, I had this one client where, so with a lot of trainers, there's a lot of stuff on the internet, a lot of stuff on social media, and a lot of trainers will pick things up from social media. I'm not saying it's bad, I'm not saying it's good. It just depends on the client and your style of training. But if I do see something cool, I try to make it relatable to the client, right? Because we're always learning, we're always growing as trainers. No one knows everything. But so I had this one client who we would have two dumbbells in each hand. We would walk and then we would set the dumbbells down in a squat position, pick the dumbbells up, walk further, set the kettlebells down in a squat position. So we did that the length of the turf and back. I was able to get her to do it because I specifically said, this is what I call a grocery bag pickup. So that way, because she's getting a little older, you never throw your back out, you strengthen your core, your posture, your hips. And she was like, okay, I got it. And so she was actually sort of excited to do it because then she started saying, well, this weighs this much. So I probably have.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, making it real for them. That's very, very important. So kind of moving away a little bit from the personal training aspect, more into the personal development space. You drop a lot of quotes frequently. So like online, you'll post quotes of the day. Why do you feel like that's really important for people to see that and for you to post that and kind of have that brand associated with you?
But for me, there's a lot of different heads to that. Is a Since I do watch history and understand history and like people learning from people, I also feel like it's important to not only just stay motivated but stay encouraged. And so for a lot of individuals, while they may see that I post the motivational quotes or things like that, I'm doing it a obviously for everyone to see and to help encourage them, but it also helps me out. So like when I go and look back at my Facebook look back and things like that, I can see those quotes, get inspiration, draw inspiration, but then it helps other people out who you may not ever talk to. There's a lot of people that, and this is really key for anyone that's on social media. Even though you don't feel like posting and you don't think your message is being heard, there are plenty of people looking at your stuff. They just never say anything until the time is right, or they may never say anything, but you can still impact their life. And so for me, I got into the personal development space right around 2018. I was just going through a lot of different things, getting older and trying to figure out my way in life. And I realized that there were a lot of distractions in my life. So I had shut down the business. I was trying to transition into like the corporate America. But there was still a lot of things going on. And I've always felt like I was destined and for more in life. And so I went down this personal development rabbit hole where I would always fill my mind up with motivational quotes, motivational speeches. I cut out music for a long time. I cut out social media. And then that helped me grow as a person, which helped everything else in my life. So I always say that once you take care of you first, then you can take care of everyone else, because then your cup is overflowing and all the cups under you get filled as well. Versus if I have an empty cup, right? So the personal development touches everything else: family, business, just friendship, everything. And so for me, it's always important to go back to the personal development side, because life ebbs and flows, you get in and out of it, but when you build that foundation, you typically go back to the foundation. And so that at that point, 2018, I got into it. I think it's 2019, I decided to write a book, start a podcast, and which also led me to videos. And this is all going to make sense by the end of the podcast: between personal development, personal training, videos, motivational speaking. It all ties in together. But as the episode goes on, I'll unravel it more. But yeah, so personal development to me is key, because we're, like I said, on this earth for a certain number of years, hopefully. And why not make the best of it? Why not learn and grow as a person? Why do the same thing that everyone else is doing? Why not understand yourself? Why not understand how you operate? Why not understand how you can impact people? Why not understand what gifts you have? Why not understand some of the reasons why you're here?
Absolutely. I think like when I see how you operate on a very balanced schedule, a very balanced lifestyle. And sometimes I feel like people, especially me, like this happened to me where I got so caught up in being very, very excellent at fitness, but I also like let a lot of things go to the side, right? Like because I was so focused on fitness, my mom took time to like bake me a birthday cake, like my favorite kind of birthday cake. And I was like, Mom, I'm not eating that. Like, but like that, like, I don't want to, it definitely didn't ruin the relationship, but like I couldn't even go away from that specific thing that I was so focused on to kind of balance my relationship. So how can people in general balance all of those different things in their life, and how have you been able to balance, your entrepreneurship, writing a book, having your own business, also focusing on your family? Like how has that been for you, and what's your secret to keeping all those things balanced together?
Great question. So the secret is to understand that it's not always going to be perfect and that you're human, but you have to have some foundational things that you do to recenter you or keep you grounded or reset you. And so for me, the big thing is whether you believe in religion or not, or however you want to do it, however you want to frame it. But getting up early in the morning, having your quiet time where you're either praying, meditating, saying mantras, affirmations. And so why I say that's important is because my book that I wrote is called Turn Down the Noise, right? It's pretty much saying when you eliminate distractions, you understand what your purpose is, you understand what the next move is, you understand yourself at a deeper level because there's no distractions. And the reason I say that it works is because I guess the best way to put it is before radio waves were discovered, right? People didn't realize you can transmit a signal from, point A to point B because they didn't see the radio waves. Now, hindsight is 2020. The radio waves were always there. We just discovered it, right? So someone focused in on, hey, let me discover this one thing, and then they found it. So with us as humans, we understand ourselves way more than we think. way more than we give credit to. We knew ourselves as we were children, but we let the world get in the way. So once you eliminate a lot of distractions, find that quiet time for yourself repeatedly, right? Stay consistent with it. You then start to unravel a lot of answers in terms of what you should do next. It helps you also process your emotions, what you're going through, because a lot of times, I remember one time I had a client who I was training. Client was always happy, always go lucky. And then one day, and the client was going through a bunch of stuff, right? As trainers, they tell you everything. One day, the client just breaks down because I was inquisitive and asking questions. And the client said, I didn't realize I was carrying so much. She never processed it, right? She was just
Yeah.
going, 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 so many different distractions. And so I would say, while no one's perfect, understand you're not perfect, but understand that there are some things you can control. So control the controllables and then move from there, because the world is going to happen anyway, but control the part you can.
Yeah, it's like it's addressing the stack of papers, right? I don't know if you're a big Jordan Peterson fan. I am. I have been in the past, and it's taking accountability for what is on your plate and looking at what is on your plate and kind of what's the best way to say this? Like audit yourself, like audit what you have to do and then addressing what you have to do. And that time in the morning could best be spent doing those things. Like I've often just asked the question, okay, what do I need to do? And immediately there's an answer in my head with what I have to do. It's just a matter of actually carrying that out and actually addressing it in general. And I don't think, when you have all that noise in your head, right, you don't even take the time to figure out what you actually need to do. Going a little bit into that book, like what was your, obviously turning down the noise and, focusing on what you need to do, but what was your inspiration for writing a book in general?
Yeah, so I struggled in school as a kid, right? Struggled with math, reading. I never thought to myself that I would be an author. I never wanted to be an author. I honestly, paperback books, I don't really like to read that much, if I'm being honest. Have I in the past? Yes. But the reason why I started with that part of what I just said is because the book actually came to me, because I was able to turn down the noise, a still voice in my head, or a push to, hey, you need to write this book, because people have always come to you for some type of life advice, some type of personal development. You're going through it right now. Document this journey. And people have always seen you as an action taker based off of how you are and how you feel. And so one day I was just quiet, doing my meditations, mantras, and just sort of like sitting with everything, my emotions, just my thoughts. And the idea of writing the book, starting a podcast, and starting a personal development business all came to me in that little moment. And so for anyone that knows me, I'm an action taker. So as soon as I get something that I'm passionate about, I'll take action towards. Well, this is one of the first times, I'll say probably second time, where the action or what I want to do came to me versus me seeking out what to do next. And it was because I was able to eliminate all my distractions. And so, like I said, I wasn't very good with academics, more so like first grade to high school. College was different. I was a little bit more focused, but I didn't like to read, didn't really like to write, didn't know how to write a book, didn't understand that process, but I did understand how I operate as a human being. And so I actually wrote the book in 6 weeks. I
Wow.
wrote the book in 6 weeks. I published a year later because there's like a lot of different drafts and editing and all those things. And the reason I was able to do that is because when you turn down the noise in your life, you understand how you operate best. So for me, I'm a sprinter. Physically, I'm a sprinter. Short bursts of energy. How I work best in short bursts. How I work best with a schedule. Early in the morning, if I can do something with a short burst, or at night, I can do something with a short burst, I'm more likely to get it done versus trying to, string it out over hours and hours of the day. So I knew that 6 week window was a short burst for me to say, hey, I can do this, but I only have 6 weeks versus, hey, I'm going to give myself a year to do it. Now, this is just for me specifically, but if I gave myself a year to do it, I would have never have done it, right? I needed to be excited about it, do it in that short amount of time, and then move on to the next stage of it, which was getting 6 trusted people together to say, hey, I have this manuscript. Would you guys be okay with reading it? Let me know what you think. Let me know, how it flows, if it's confusing, and then we'll all come to dinner after we're done after a certain amount of time. And so that was the next step. So I work in short bursts, but I only know that because I was able to turn down the noise. Had I tried to do it like someone else, probably would have never written it. And so that's why it's important to understand how you operate as a person and go forward from there.
That's very interesting because I personally, I've never thought of that. And I think now that you're saying it, it's really, really clicking with me. Like right now, I'm reading this book called The 12-Week Year, where they say give yourself 12 weeks to achieve something like over a year. They start out by talking about people look at things in terms of a whole year. That's why at the end of the year, everyone's starting to, oh, I want to change what I'm doing next year. At the end of the year, companies are, wait, we need this much more money, this much sales. And somehow they always hit the goal because now there's a time constraint on what they need to do. And
Uh-huh.
it talks about setting important time constraints for yourself. Give yourself a deadline, give yourself, 12 weeks. I assume that's just because like quarters, like for companies, their main, clients are companies. But I think that concept has always been floating around in my mind, that's something that really, really helps me. However, I've never looked at it like that. So I really appreciate you actually bringing that up, because now I'll be able to, on a personal level, create a system for myself that will work better. I always, like the job I'm in right now, there's things I have to do throughout the day, and I feel like I'm sitting here like, okay, well, I need to get, these done. And, I don't want to, the person I'm working for, I don't want them to think that I'm not working 8 hours a day, but truthfully, I can get this done in 2 hours. So do I string it out over 8 hours to make, to kind of take away that guilt that I'm only going to work for 2 or 3 hours and then that's it? Or do I just get it done as fast as I can and then go about my day doing other things that I need to do? And I think that's a huge problem with the corporate world, right? Like you're given 8 hours a day. You must be here from 9 to 5 or 8 to 4, or whatever the hours are. But truthfully, these people are, if you give them deadlines throughout the day, they're more capable of getting things done than they realize, and that a lot of other people realize. And one of the downfalls of it is if you become a person that can get something done in 2 hours, your boss, for the most part, will see that and go, oh, we can give them more. Oh, we can
Uh-huh.
give them more. We can give them more work. We can keep giving them more work because they're very capable of doing a lot more. And that's why they say that like good people and good workers, they get rewarded with more work. They don't get rewarded with a higher pay or, more hours off, more PTO. They get rewarded with more work. And I feel like a lot of the corporate systems, not all of them, but a lot of them, they have fostered this stagnation because people don't want to do more because all they're going to do is be given more work. And I feel like that's where, having that sprinting mindset is typically an entrepreneur mindset. And a lot of people who are entrepreneurs at heart, from my opinion, my experience, they're diagnosed with like ADHD because they don't want to sit there and do, just sit there and listen, or just sit there and do the work, or this test should take, an hour for you to do and you're done in 15 minutes. And they're like, well, you need to sit here for another 45 minutes. For what? I'm done.
Right.
I'm done with the exam. Why do I have to sit here for another 45 minutes? What are you talking about? And they're perceived as, troublemakers or people with high energy, or they have some sort of diagnosis. But if you can hone in and create a system like you have, it becomes truly a superpower. And I don't think a lot of people realize that.
Well, I have a cousin who's she's probably 8, 9, maybe 10 years younger than me. And so this question she asked me was probably 5, 6 years ago. And when you're a younger cousin, you don't know how old your older cousins are.
Yeah.
So she was like, "Hey, how old are you?" And I told her, and she's like, "That's it?" I was like, "Yeah, why?" She's like, "You've seemed to live a lot of life within the amount of time you've been here." I'm like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "You've done a lot." And in my mind, as an entrepreneur, you haven't done enough. But I
Hmm.
think I attribute it to if something that I'm passionate about, I'm gonna run towards it, but I run towards it in my way. Now, is my way always right? Yes or no, right? You never know. It's not always right. Let's just say it's not always right. But there's lessons you learn along the way of certain things. So, as I said earlier, I was going to piece together like the personal development, the videos, the personal training, X, Y, and Z. So, when I had my personal training studio, you would never see me on camera. I may videotape my clients, show my clients working out, but I was deathly afraid of being on camera or even on a microphone. So, that was 4.5 years of having that studio. You never saw me on camera. It was pretty successful. I was still pretty successful doing it that way. So when I got into personal development and motivational speaking, I realized I had to be on camera, right? And so this is why knowing yourself is really important. So you ready for this? I'm going to jump all around. So just
Hmm.
try to figure it out. All right. So personal development, motivation, I need to be on camera. Okay. So what's the best way for me to get better and get comfortable with being on camera? Okay. I know myself well enough to know that when I have something to face, I have to face it head on. And the reason I know that is because when I was 18, I was playing college football and I had to give blood for the first time. So I'm thinking it's just a regular shot. Like you get your shot. But once I sit down and I see the needle and you can see the inside of the hole,
Hmm.
it scared me, but I had to watch it go in my arm in order to face it. And so that's when it dawned on me. I'm like, okay, I have to watch things and face it head on. So now I have to be on video, motivational speaking. The first thing for me to do is videotape myself just talking on my phone. And for me to see it over and over every day, over and over, until I became used to seeing myself and hearing myself. The next thing was to show family and friends, right? It's even scarier now.
Hmm.
And so while some are like, okay, that's cute, others are like, well, what are you doing? But I kept showing those same people until they got used to it. So the next thing was, all right, so let me get on social media and just post some stuff. So I remember doing my first live on Facebook when it was really popular. It was terrible. I was just like, I don't know, blabbering random things and just sort of sitting there waiting for whatever to happen. It was just weird. But I kept doing it and I got consistent with it. So now I can start the podcast, I can do videos and things like that, right? The book was out. I attributed some of my motivation and personal development stuff to certain like high level individuals within the industry of motivation, personal development. So like Eric Thomas, Billy Allsbrooks, things like that. And so as a thank you, I sent my book out to those individuals, right? You can send it to wherever, whatever address they have available. And so it just so happened that year I was able to talk to Eric Thomas because I was taking one of his courses, and he recognized, because I had my book cover in the background. He recognized my book cover. He's like, "Oh, you sent that to me," and I was like, "Yeah, that's pretty cool." And then it just also so happens that a year into my podcast, I was able to have Dr. Billy Allsbrooks, I was a Mr. Blessed and Unstoppable, on my podcast, right?
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool. But then a couple months later, he's like, "Hey, my opening speaker can't make it to, I forgot what city it was at, maybe Philadelphia. Can you come? Can you open up for me?" I had never spoken in front of a crowd like that. So I said, "Yes, no problem, no hesitation." Was I nervous? Yes. Did I probably mess up? Yes. But I say that to say that all started with me knowing how I have to face adversity by facing myself, because all those steps led to me being able to open up for him. And then all those steps led to me being able to, now people see me online, they're like, "Oh, you're a natural, you post videos, you edit videos, you talk on camera." It's because I learned how I operated and took something from the personal development industry that I was doing and now moved it into the fitness, back into the fitness space, whereas before I didn't. So all that stuff ties together. So if there's one lesson here, is do things, just do it. Whether it's going to work out or not, you learn lessons and you take the positive, or you take the experiences from those things and you move it into the next direction you're going into. So now you're fully equipped with more ammo to speak going forward versus being too scared to start anything ever.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know if you know this about me actually, but when I was younger, I personally had a speech impediment.
Mm.
I would my S's, my T's, I had really, really tough time articulating words. And also, being heavy as well. I had a very, very tough time being on camera, being in photos, being on video. And I mean, this is a perfect example that I'm doing both. I'm addressing, the articulation portion of speaking in public. I mean, I know it's quote unquote in public, not really, but it goes online for everyone to see. And also I'm on camera the entire time. And I think that a lot of people, I mean, I want your opinion on this. Do you feel like you've ever had, like, was it you or was it other people's opinions of how it's going to look, which was your main, kind of hesitation at first?
Think it was, I mean, I know exactly what it was. So in first grade, I remember we had to go to a reading table
Yeah.
for reading and math. And I was always in the third group, which was the group that needed help, right? And then I would always get taken out of class with, like, maybe three other people to do extra reading help.
Mm.
So that first grade experience, in my mind, I said, okay, I'm not as smart as everyone else. And so I perpetuated that. Remember, I said my grades from first grade to high school weren't good.
Yeah.
College was different. So from first grade to high school, I thought I was dumb, thought I was stupid, thought I wasn't, I was just a good athlete. That was it. But once I got older, I realized how I operate. I went to college, eventually found how I operated, and then I was smart all of a sudden. And so I think me being scared was at first based on how I thought about myself, and then I projected that onto everyone else, because people I've talked to since then that have known me from high school, and I would tell them these stories. I'm like, "Yeah, I wasn't that smart. I thought I was dumb." They're like, "We never thought that. Like, why'd you think that?" And so they're so shocked that I felt like that about myself. So it was my feelings projected onto everyone else. And so that's what the fear was for me, because I didn't want anyone to call me stupid. I didn't want anyone to say he can't speak because, I talk fast, my lips are big, all these things. I didn't want anyone to say something negative about me that I already thought about myself. But they didn't think those things. It was just my experience from first grade, the formative years to high school, that led me to think like that. And then once you get, once you see how you operate, and you got to recognize this for anyone that's listening, everyone has their own zone of genius. Everyone operates different. So when you operate in your zone of genius, it doesn't matter what anyone thinks about you because they will see your zone of genius, right? So we named some people earlier. You take, like I said, Henry Ford. If Henry Ford tried to build trains, I mean, it would have been totally different, right? But we see him as the genius for cars. So there's so many different ways that you can operate, but it is within your zone of genius. So while, let's say someone else wants to open a personal training studio, person A wants to do it and person B wants to do it, you don't have to copy anyone. You do it your own way.
What's a good way that you determined or that you think other people can determine what their zone of genius is?
That's a good question. For me, I go off of feelings and, what lights me up inside. But then you also, again, those quiet moments, you have to reflect on life, right? So a lot of those quiet moments aren't just the affirmations, mantras, and prayers. You actually have to reflect on your life. What has gone right, what has made you feel good, what didn't go right. You got to think about the times that you have actually executed something, how you achieved it, what you achieved, big or small. I always say they're stackable wins. So small wins scale to big wins. And so I had to realize, okay, I may have not felt like I was the smartest, but I achieved X, Y, and Z. How did I achieve X, Y, and Z? Okay, this is how I achieved it. So there's a different lane I can go down in terms of trying to achieve whatever the set goal is. So I would say for anyone to figure out what their zone of genius is, you literally have to reflect on your life. But then also you have to talk to the people that are closest to you. Like your parents probably know more about you than what you realize, right? So my sister, um, like I said, I'm a driven person. Like if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And so I was talking to my sister a few years ago, and she's like, "Yeah, you accomplish a lot of things." I said, "Yeah, but I feel like this is like I just started doing this." She's like, "No, no, no, no. You've always been like that." And she referenced a time where I was into like the music scene and I was doing the music production and things like that. And she's like, "You started from nothing, not knowing what to do, to then like we had to open up for like Flow Rider and Lupe Fiasco and things like that within a year." And she's like, "I saw your dedication and how you zoned in on it and how you operated in on that thing." And so sometimes you have to, like I said, reflect on your past, but also talk to the people that are close to you. Hey, what patterns do you know or do you notice about me that, make me happy, or things that I do really well, or things that you like that I do for you? Like, what do you notice? Because let's face it, some people have a hard time looking over their own life or remembering certain things. So that's where you need the outside help as well. But yeah, just really get quiet, get still. The world is loud. Sometimes turn it down. And then a lot of the answers you seek, you already have. There's too much noise around.
Yeah, I think that even with your like music production, right? Like do you feel like there was a social bias that you kind of held because you were like, well, I'm not doing what I'm doing now, which is like motivational speaking, personal training. There are things that are socially perceived as good, and maybe like music production, a lot of people, at least in my world, they're like, oh, well, you may get somewhere with it, but you may not. Do you think there was like a social bias to like, I'm not really doing something because it's music production rather than like personal training and like building businesses in that aspect?
No, I didn't care, to be honest. So, I'm not gonna lie. So for me, if something excites me, I'm gonna go all in. I'm gonna go for it. And so, you know, you may have someone who starts in music production and they never get anywhere, and then you have someone like Timberland. They both started in music production, right? For those that don't know who Timberland is, just like sort of Google it. But there's in every industry, no matter what you start, there's someone who has achieved something. And if there's someone who hasn't, that means that there's a lot more room for you to achieve it, right? You just carve your own path. And the reason why I'm so big on whatever the case, whatever it is, just starting and doing it, is because you don't know what the outcome is going to be anyway, but you do know what the outcome is going to be if you never start it. You don't achieve anything.
Absolutely. Yeah. Do you feel like people like that certainty though? Like they get
Yeah.
comfortable with that certainty? And
Yeah.
what do you feel like is the number one dictator of success?
I feel like the majority of the world like certainty. There's a small percentage of the people that. So I don't know if you're familiar with the DISC assessment, right? So you have the D, the I, the S, the C, and they all stand for different like behavioral traits. And so I would say the S is the more so complacent person, where you put them into a system and they can operate the system. They don't want to deviate from it, don't change things too drastically, and they want the consistency in their life. That's the high majority of the world. There's nothing wrong with that. But then you have someone like a high D, who's a small majority of the world. Those are like the drivers. Okay, I'm gonna break it down for you in terms of I'm gonna put some things together to help you understand it more. The high D is the pilot of the airplane,
Okay.
right? In the cockpit, there's the co-pilot. So high Ds run together. They're steering the entire ship. or the entire plane. And then you have the high I, right? Who's the gregarious one, the entertainer, the one that wants to make sure everyone is taken care of. So you have the stewardess. And then you have the S, which is more so the grounds control, right? They have what they're doing on the ground. And then you have the C, who, let's say, like the baggage, luggage people who put the luggage on. And so understanding how you operate, you sort of understand like where your zone is. And so and I took the assessment too. So I'm more of a high D, high C personality. The high C is also someone who they have to get all the information before they jump. Now everyone has all four letters. You just have a different amount of each. And so like I said, the majority of the world, they like consistency, and I don't want to call them complacent, but they like just the consistency. And so that's why you don't see everyone trying to jump to be an entrepreneur. And that's why you don't see. So there's this one friend I have who always has an idea. I want to try this. I want to try that. And it's usually after someone else has tried it, but they never start. Even if they start, it's just a little bit. They just dip their toe in. Versus another friend who goes all in, has the same amount of ideas, whether or not they work out, they actually like try to execute it. And so the person who doesn't really try is more so the S. They like consistency. They just don't understand themselves. Like if you stay in your system and execute your system, you will be fine. You have to stay in your lane based on who you are. Now, can you change it? Yeah, you can, but it's a little bit harder, right? And so, like I said, I've always been an entrepreneur. So I sort of like my system has been my system going forward. But I think for most people, they're just scared of, there's been times I've been without like real income because I'm an entrepreneur, but you make it work. But those same times you've been without income, it helps strengthen you for the times to come when that may happen again, right? Because you know what it looks like now. So if you don't know what something looks like, you're a little bit more timid to actually even try it.
Yeah, like Eric Thomas in one of his videos, he goes, "I still eat chips off the floor because it may get to a point where I may not have the money that I have now." I mean, he's wildly successful now. Like
Yeah.
I'm sure he's fine, but he's like, but if something does happen, I want to make sure that it doesn't break me. If I have to go back to what I've been at before, that bottom that I've been at before, and to go back on your disc assessment as well, I feel like being a high C and a high D, you want to have all the information so that way you could steer the plane properly, right? Like if you are steering the plane but you don't know where you're going, it's going to be pretty hard to steer the plane, right?
Oh, I'm glad you said that. So listen to this. When I wrote the book, right? I wrote it in 6 weeks, like I said. So when I say that, people are like, oh, wow, you just like up and wrote a book. Or when I execute an idea, people are like, we just had an idea and now you're here. Like, how do you, well, like, the disc assessment helped me understand that what really happens behind the scenes. I kind of knew it, but the outside world doesn't know it. So when it came to the book, since I'm a high D, I'm also a bullet point person. If someone talks to me in small talk or they talk in long paragraphs or a lot of detail, like I zone out. But they gave me straight facts, direct. I understand. I listen. So since I'm a high D, I knew that in order to write the book, I had 6 weeks. But I also knew more importantly that to outline the book, I had to outline the chapters in bullet point. So then I can just fill in the gaps of the chapter. So that allowed me to write it in 6 weeks. So it wasn't idea, book is done. It was idea, get all the information. How can I self-publish the book? How do I outline the book for myself? What services do I need? Right. Once I had that information, then I was able to write the book. The same thing with, personal training. How can I do it? What resources do I need? Same thing with the podcast. When I had my podcast, fitness has always been the foundation, right? So at the time, I didn't have money for all the podcast equipment. Didn't really understand like how to do podcasts. So I did my research, figured out how much I needed to, you know, purchase for in terms of equipment. I didn't have the money at the time. So what did I do? I went back into my bag of fitness and I knew that, okay, I can create this 6 week program and I'll have X number of people sign up for the program. I'll use that money to buy the products for the actual podcast, launch the podcast probably 2 months later or something like that. After I had a couple episodes under my belt. So yes, you have to understand where you're going in order to fly the plane. I can't just run and gun it, right? I have to know, hey, I'm a bullet point person. These are the steps I need, right? This is the idea, steps I need. Let's execute. And then I'll get to a new level where I'll have to rinse and repeat that same process.
Yeah, I think a lot of people too, like they go through the work of planning like you did, and then for some reason they just don't jump. And I feel like planning is the hardest part of it. Because once you have like, you have the bullet points of your chapters, main points you want to make in the chapters, all you have to do from there is just fill it out with ideas that surround the points that you've already made. And I mean, I also feel like starting to plan is pretty hard too for people. I mean, what do you feel like for the majority of people is the hardest thing when it comes to being successful and doing what they actually want to do?
I feel like a lot of people don't write it out. They keep everything jumbled in their head. So like when you keep everything jumbled in your head, it's like a spider web, right? You can't organize your thoughts. And so with the book and how I didn't write it down in a long paragraph form in terms of how I was going to outline it and what this chapter is actually going to say. It was literally like, okay, I want 10 chapters, chapter names, and then small bullet points of like the chapters, and then fill it in from there, right? So it was that simple for me because had I not known how I operate, I probably would have tried to figure out every single detail of everything and got overwhelmed and done, right? So there's, I guess, two aspects to it is they don't write anything down or they do too much when they write it down, depending on who they are as an individual. Some people may need someone else to do that part for them, right? So, like I said, knowing who you are, you need to know your strengths and weaknesses as well, right? And so for me, since I didn't feel like I was adequate in terms of academics, I remember anytime I saw red on my paper, my tests, right? I was like, I don't know what it did to me, but I shut down. And so I remember I had an X a long time ago, and anytime I had to write something, type it out. This is way before Chat GPT. I would have to have her edit it, and I hated that process, but I knew I had to face it, and I got better and better and better at writing things. So knowing how you operate will help you overcome some of those things that will actually stop you from planning or whatever the case is, because you may have to delegate certain or yeah, well, I guess figure out who can do what for you or who's in your life that can help you out, but you might have to delegate certain things as well. So it's just really figuring out how you operate. And sometimes you figure that out by trying certain things and realizing, yeah, this doesn't light me up inside. Yeah, this part I can't do. Yeah, this part stops me all the time. Let me figure out how I can overcome it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people too. I know I personally had this problem. They don't want to utilize the people that they have in their life. And there's a guy, his name is Simon Sinek, and he has a story about one of his friends where he said, "Hey, like you're the person that if something was going wrong in my life, like I would call you, and I would want you to be the person that would come and help me." And his friend said, "I would be mad if you didn't, because when you don't allow the people in your life to help you, especially when they have that knowledge and that experience, they want to help you. They want to be that blessing in your life." And I feel like some people just get caught up on that asking aspect of it, like especially for me, like, if I have a friend that, is really good at, HVAC stuff. If why would I call a company if my friend can come over and say, "Hey, these things are wrong with it," and at the very least go, "This is how much they should charge you," and then you're like, "Dude, thanks, like I appreciate it." And then I'm in the financial world. "Hey, what how should I balance my savings and my checking? How much should I be saving per month?" Based, "Oh, well, here's some suggestions, because you're my friend, I can kind of suggest, what would be a healthy amount for you to save each month," stuff like that. And that would make me feel good knowing that someone trusts me enough with something like that. What are some like real life examples, other than your ex, that you've, kind of leveraged people to help you, progress through life?
Yeah, so I mean, one example is our conversation we had last week, right? So I have a new business venture that I'm starting. It involves fitness, and this is a culmination of everything I've seen in the industry, my pitfalls, my successes, everything. And I knew you were into, you're good with financials. I obviously learned that early on, you and another person that we know.
Yeah.
And I leaned on you. I'm like, hey, I'm starting this idea. And then you started, I knew at some point you're going to say, hey, this is how I
Yeah.
can help, right? So is sometimes having conversations with people speaking their language. So obviously there's that aspect. And then there's some people that I quite frankly look up to in general and just ask them questions. So I always tell people never be afraid to ask questions, right?
Yeah.
Because the worst that can happen is the person says no or they don't want to talk about it. Like that's the worst that can happen. And so I know someone who's very successful in franchising around this area, and I pitched the idea to that person probably a year and a half ago now, just as an idea because it had been brewing for 2 years. This new business venture I'm talking about, and this person is a multimillionaire and is someone who's super smart, really good with numbers, really good with just articulating their communication, and someone who I in the past would have been too intimidated to talk to. But as you get older, you realize everyone is human. Doesn't matter how much money they have, what their title is. And so I pitched the idea to that person. They're like, this is something that's not out there. You probably want to put a business plan together ASAP. So that was my green light. Like, okay, it's not just my idea in my head that sounds good. It actually sounds good. And so I leveraged that person, right, just as a sounding board for the franchising model. And then obviously I leveraged you as much as I can for the financial part. But then I also reached out to another person who's really well connected in New York City with financials and things like that, and just business in general. Hey, I got this idea. Here's the pitch. I'm going to send you the video. Do you know anyone who may be interested in investing? Not only did the person say, yep, I know people. In fact, that's probably the best pitch I've ever heard, and I'm probably going to be your first investor. Right. So it was me asking that person questions, all these people questions. And partly it's because I am an inquisitive person, but communication is the thing that creates or destroys, right? You might as well use it to create.
Absolutely. Leveraging that's very important. And I think you do an excellent job of leveraging that.
Thank you.
What so you were in the boutique business before, the boutique fitness business before. And then you kind of went away from it a little bit. And it sounds like this is something that you're kind of getting back into it in a sense. What made you want to, get out of it and then kind of work your way back into it?
Yeah, so going back to the personal training business, me realizing it's not scalable, and then me getting out of fitness for a while and doing all the things that I needed to do outside of fitness to then bring it back into fitness, i.e., the videos, being on camera, speaking, showing my personality and things like that. Um, it sort of led me to the culmination of, okay, I had to get out of it because I had to learn other things, but I also had to see what was going on outside of it, right? And so the idea came about. All right, this is the wildest story. You ready? So when I had the idea years ago, when you do like comparison and market analysis, when I had the idea years ago, you have competitors that you have to do the market analysis, competitive analysis for the competitors. And this is years ago. And so you can only do so much research. It just so happened that I did end up working for those competitors
Mm.
eventually within that time. So then I had a better insight to how this thing should work, right? And it just happened that way. I wasn't trying to. It just happened that way. And so that gave me more of a green light as to, okay, these are still the problems in the industry in general. And this is the idea that's been kicking around. Now, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. When I had my personal training business and studio, that was the first idea that came to me, and that was the first idea I manifested, right? I don't know how I was able to get the facility. Like I didn't have any, I was young. I didn't really have a financial background. I didn't, like my credit wasn't good. I don't know how I got it, but I manifested that facility, and it was like a burning desire. Like I said, I started the idea came to me in 2009, and I opened it in 2013. It was a burning desire for that long. Fast forward to this idea, it's been a burning desire for years now, but I still had to do other things first. But it's also the one thing that I realized is scalable. Because remember, I'm an entrepreneur, and I realized that first business wasn't scalable. And I've done other businesses since, but in terms of fitness, this is the second real one that is scalable, and it's something that is needed. And now I can utilize all my other gifts along the way that I've learned along the journey to put into this. And so it's just that burning desire. So if there's another takeaway, that if you're listening, if you have a burning desire, it's there for a reason. It's there for a reason. Let it marinate, go with that burning desire, and eventually it's going to come out.
Yeah, it was a redirection. It wasn't a no. It was a redirection. It was, hey, you're capable and there's something here that needs to grow and it needs to reach more people. However, we can't do this until we learn all these other things that are going to be necessary in order to reach the maximum amount of people. Like, you wanted a flower, but God had a bouquet for you. He was just like, hey, like just, I'm going to take the flower away. Just trust me, but I'm gonna bring this back for you, and you're gonna have more than you had to begin with. And
Exactly.
I think a lot of people, like especially me, like with this podcast as well. And I know like there's a lot of times where I talk about me on the podcast, even when I'm talking to other people, but like it's all I have, right? It's all what I know is my experience. I can use other people's experiences, but I know directly from my experience, what has happened to me and how I have learned from it as an individual. But I was doing 2 episodes a week. Like I was just constantly like putting out content and constantly like, doing all these things, but I felt like I had no authenticity to it. And I felt like I really had to stick like to that hustle culture to an extent where, when I fell off of like not running in the morning, like if I didn't run one morning or I didn't work out one day, I felt like I was being completely unauthentic in every single video that I had. I was like, well, that's not me, clearly, because I missed my run this morning. And like it just like shut me down completely, and I had to kind of rebalance my life to a point where now I don't plan on missing, but like I'm putting out once a week because it's something that I can keep up with having a full-time job and also being committed to myself and also filling up my own cup because I was emptying the cup, but the way I was emptying it, I had like nothing left. And now I have
Yeah.
the opportunity to like refill my cup and then also put out content for other people. Besides, in the morning when you have that quiet time, what are some other things that you do to fill your own cup up?
Working out. So I've been working out since I was in ninth grade. I just turned 40, so it's 1999. And so, I've gotten in and out of fitness a couple times in life, but just working out in general has always been there as a baseline, no matter what I'm going through. And so, again, knowing your own self is the most important thing. I know that when I work out, I'll feel better afterwards. I know that when I work out, I'll feel better the next day. I know that when I work out, I'll have more confidence, more self esteem, more energy. Now, does that always happen after every workout? Do I always feel energized? No. But some of those workouts are just to keep the consistency, right? And so working out for me fills the cup in the physical aspect, but also the mental aspect because I'm doing something for myself. I don't always like to work out. I don't like to work out like everyone else all the time. I don't like I'm a human being, so I'm not a fitness fanatic. People think I am, but I'm not like a fitness fanatic. I just I enjoy working out and I enjoy what the benefits of working out can do for you. I.e., since I do understand history, you see people that have all these ailments when they get older. Why not try to take care of it now? And so, working out is one of the things I do, and I also recharge by watching documentaries. Kid you not, I can sit down, watch documentaries, listen to documentaries on YouTube, driving in the car if I have a far drive. There was one time I drove to from I think it was Florida to Raleigh, North Carolina. I forgot how long the drive was, and all I did was listen to documentaries the whole time. No music, just documentaries because that fills my cup, teaches me lessons, gives me motivation, and things like that. And then obviously hanging out with family that helps out, so that's one of the things. And then you have to find the things that help you out, and sometimes it's within moments, right? So since I do my operating system is if I'm working on a certain project for a long time and I start to like it's too long, I know I have to break and do something else that is going to re-energize me, whether or not I go back to that project right then and there afterwards, that I have to stop, go do something else, and then come back to it when I come back to it if there's no like immediate deadline. But knowing how you operate is going to help you, I guess, recharge when you need to recharge, fill your cup when you need to fill your cup. But then it also teaches you when your cup is low. And meaning, if your cup is low, if my cup is low, there's some people I don't need to be around. If my
Mm,
cup is low, there's some people that are going to suck my energy. If my cup is low, then I'm not going to show up best for said person or said people, and it's not going to turn out right. So you have to listen to yourself, listen to your body as well, and understand, okay, I probably need to recharge. Sometimes I guess the lesser of two evils is to not be around certain spaces, even though people want you to show up, want you to do things. People are always going to want something from you, but it's up to you to say, not today, I'm not feeling well, or not today. I want to do other things. And then a lot of times people will ask me, okay, what do you got going on today? Because they think you're free if you don't say you're working.
mm.
But sometimes that time is for you to recharge. And so just listening to your body, understanding how you operate, and then, figuring out really how you recharge. But like I said, for me, fitness, documentaries, family, and things like that.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely think, watch like listening to documentaries, like for me, people have different ways of viewing that. I feel like for me personally, a documentary, I don't think that would charge me. Maybe it would. Maybe it would. I haven't really listened to them all too often, but I do listen to podcasts. That does
Mhm.
recharge me. That makes me feel like I'm doing something positive. I'm doing something good. I'm getting information that can help me progress, whether that be just personally, relationship wise, or business wise, fitness wise. Those are things that, if I feel like I have more information, I feel more prepared, type
Mhm.
C, right? A high C, then I feel like I can go out and be the high D that I need to be because I have more of the information that is necessary to be the person that I want to be.
Yeah, and I will say everything is could be seasonal too, right? So
Mm,
here's the I'm glad you said that about podcasts. I went through a whole season where I didn't really listen to documentaries. I listened to podcasts, right? And that
yeah.
helped me and that served its purpose. Now I'm in a season of and documentaries have always been there under the surface, but I'm in a season of documentaries. And then the next season maybe go back to podcasts or something different. But I'm glad you said that because I have to preface it by saying everything can be seasonal, but it's still how you operate.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely, I've hit certain seasons where like right now my season is the stair stepper, right? My season is not
Ooh,
running
that's rough.
outside, but it It's good for me because I can just put my phone on and put a podcast on or put a video on, and I'm not thinking about the stair stepper, right? But I'm still doing what I need to do. Well, I mean, I'm definitely thinking about it because I'm definitely sweating, but
That's
like
rough.
it provides that buffer where I'm not just thinking about how long I've been on the stair stepper. I'm
Mhm.
entertained by something else. So like that helps me definitely at the end of a workout too, going on that. And I feel like even though I'm not going fast on a treadmill and I'm not out of breath and I'm maybe not be working on my cardiovascular system and my breath, but I am working on the fat burning portion of cardio itself, which is very important. I'm sure I'll get back to running outside for sure at some point. I just got a weighted vest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've used it a few times and it definitely helps with cardio.
Hey, better you than me. That's rough. Oof.
So it seems like from an internal perspective, especially talking to you, this past almost hour, that you have a lot of stuff figured out. But is there something that you personally are still working on, or something that you haven't quite figured out yet that you're looking for, or currently researching in order to help figure out and progress your life in a positive way?
I would say so. I look at figuring things out in stages. So I wouldn't say there's necessarily something I didn't figure out. It's I'm always trying to figure something out, if that makes sense. But I do know one thing that I've always needed to work on is networking,
Mm,
right? Because sometimes I can be I'm an extrovert, but also introvert. Just depends on what's going on.
yeah.
But sometimes being an introvert for me, when I should be networking, is the thing that's held me back. I'm also big on like people and energy, so I don't like to give my energy out to everybody. I don't like to be in every situation. So I would say for me is being a little bit more open,
Mm,
if that makes sense, versus like closed off. Because once if something doesn't seem right, I'll shut down really quick. So that's something I'm working on. It's going to be a work in progress. It's always been a work in progress. And so I would say those are it's people based people based because anyone that has done anything great or built anything great in their lives, they haven't done it by themselves. They've done it with helping other people. And so
absolutely.
I know that that's something I need to work on and I'll continue to work on and making connections and things like that.
Yeah, that's actually a big one for me as well. I'm so used to driving the plane, right? That I don't think I need air traffic control, right? Or I don't think I need, stuff like that. Like I have been very good at doing stuff on my own that I think that I can do everything on my own, but I've learned very recently that like that networking portion and being able to lean on other individuals that have other skills and also people that have access to, other groups of people, knowledge and information that you don't necessarily have, that's very, very important. And it's hard for me too, because it's easy for me if I see outside looking in what someone is doing. And also if they approach me and they talk to me about something that I find interesting, it's very easy for me to then give my energy. But it's almost like that uncertainty with relationships that kind of stops me. Like if I go up to this person and I'm talking to them or I try to spark up a conversation, is this going to be the type of person that's going to progress me positively? Or is this the type of person that right after I talk to them, they're going to start talking about like getting drunk and going out and like all this stuff. And I'm like, wow, I just wasted all this energy that could have been used for someone who's going to progress me positively. And now it's someone who is either going to complain and drain or someone that, just doesn't have their priorities straight. And maybe that sounds a little selfish, right? Because maybe I could be the person in their life that brings a different kind of energy and helps them turn it around. But if it gets to a point where like we're all human, right? And the people you spend the most time with is typically going to reflect on who you are and how you act. So if they become part of my circle, can I trust the human aspect of myself to maintain that barrier and maintain the fact that, okay, I don't identify with the poor things that they do, but I do identify with wanting to help them, trying to balance that. Like I remember even when I started working at Crunch with you, like I don't think you talked to me for the first week or so. And I was like, I wasn't like, did I do something? But I'm like, okay, this guy's very serious. Let me just take a step back. But what you were doing in that moment was you were evaluating, is this someone that's worth my time? Is this someone that is worth, pouring into and having conversations with, especially with the schedule you had? I mean, you were booked from 5 to 2:30 every day back to back. I remember one time you were like, wow, one of my clients canceled. I can rest for 30 minutes now. I
Oh,
can
I
I
was
can
good.
sit down.
Yeah. Hey, I'm going to touch on something you just said because that's very important. So yes, I was evaluating you. Obviously, there's a lot of trainers coming in and out. But if you remember earlier when I was saying, I have the high D, but I have the high C, and how do you just execute? Well, I don't just execute. I'm actually analyzing and evaluating things first. Once I did that, right? So that's what I was doing with you, and
Yeah.
that's what I do with everyone. And once I did that, then I was like, okay, good to go. And then we struck up the conversation. So I'm glad you mentioned that. But yeah, it seems like you and I have a lot of similarities in terms of that. You know, that's just always it's always gonna be a work in progress for me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I've learned a lot from you in order, like the preserving energy portion, right? Like I only helped people at Crunch that I truly felt like were deserving of it and truly wanted to do good. And people that when I looked at them and I looked at how they were servicing their clients, then I was like, okay, like when I left, I was like, I'm going to give you a bunch of people. I'm going to give you my best people, like just like you did with me. You're like, here are 3 4 of my people. Well, first you checked with me. You were like, "Do you have room in your schedule for
Yeah,
people?" And I was like, "Yeah,
yeah,
I got,
you're a beast.
yeah, I got room for like 2 or 3 people." And you gave me like 3 people, which I was very grateful for. But I did the same thing. Like I wasn't going to give clients to new people that had, like, there's a reason you don't have any clients. You know what I mean? Like, there's a reason you don't. So, like, I'm not going to give you, my best clients or any of my clients. I want the people that I've helped, they trust me. They trust with who I give them to, and they want to have, that experience, that same experience with another client. But yeah,
Definitely.
yeah, I think that in life too, not a lot of people take a lot of consideration into that, and you did, and and I took that with me, and so I really really appreciate that. If you can leave the people with just one thing that you think is the most important thing to being successful and to betting on yourself, what would that be?
I would say, so I say it a little differently now that I'm older and understanding that not everyone's the same. But if you do have that burning desire to go after more in life. I always say if you feel like you are meant to do more, become more, and have more in life, then go after it, right? So that one burning desire you have right now may not be the thing you ultimately end up doing, but it's the next step, the next phase to get to that. So if you have that burning desire, don't waste time. Just go out there and do it. But before you do it, you still have to understand how you operate. You have to understand your foundation because you can't build something on a faulty foundation because there's going to be a lot of storms in life and you don't want that storm to come and blow everything over because there was cracks in the foundation, right? So understand how you operate, go forward, don't be scared. We're only here for a certain amount of time, and then go after it in life. Listen, become your ancestors' wildest dreams. I put it that way because your parents want you to do good, your grandparents want you to do good. I'm sure your great grandparents had dreams of their great grandkids. So be your ancestors' wildest dreams.
Absolutely. Do not let those sacrifices go to waste.
Right.
Absolutely. Go all in on yourself. Well, Rambo, you want to drop your Instagram real quick so people can give you a follow and any inquiries on online training or anything like that?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook. I believe it's Rambo Sells Tampa since I do real estate as well. But there's also obviously I do fitness, real estate, and just a bunch of different things. So feel free to DM me. The book is on Amazon still. It's called Turn Down the Noise. And so yeah, just DM me, follow me, and enjoy the journey.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to be on the podcast, Rambo. I really, really appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Joe. Definitely appreciate it.
No problem. For everyone that's listening out there, we are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and we are also on YouTube. Post clips on Instagram. Thank you for listening. And as always, stay blessed.